Hello guys, welcome to another video in this coding challenge series. And in this video, we want to solve the problem detect substring in a string. All right, so it is important we look at the context so that we understand the problem we want to solve. All right, so if we look at this, it said, how would you write a function to detect a substring in a string? Okay, so supposing they're giving us a string like this, they're giving us a string like this, right? So what they want us to do is to check if cat exists in the string. Okay, so this is another example, right? They're giving us a string like this, right? So they want us to check if home exists in the string, and you can see that we have home in the string. Okay, so and what they want us to do is to return the index where it started from. So if it does not exist, then we should return -1. Okay, so it says if the substring can be found in the string, return the index at which it starts. Otherwise, return -1. Important. Do not use native string classes built-in SubString or SubFCR method. This exercise is to understand the underlying implementation of method. Okay, so we have some constraints here, which is the length of both the given string is less than 100,000, and the strings would never be null. Okay, they are telling us there must be something in the string. So the string will only consist of lower case letter. So we don't need to bother about if it's uppercase or is lowercase. The expected time complexity is big O of n, and the expected space complexity is O of 1. I have a personal problem with this very problem. Okay, so if you look at this example they actually give us here, these are words. It's very easy if they maintain something like this. So all we need to do is to split this word by the space. Then we're going to check everything. We're going to compare everything in the list, and if we find this item, we return the index. Okay, so I was solving this. I thought what I'll get is a string of word, but what I get is characters. So you can see if you look at the test case, there is no space. So which makes the problem much more difficult. But however, I'm going to solve it. So let me copy everything and go to my VS Code. So I'm going to go to my VS Code and create a file, detect a string.py. Okay, I'm gonna paste this. I'm gonna give it a space. I think I should rename this detect substring. Alright guys, I'm going to split this item into an array, and I'm also going to split the substring. So I'm going to compare every item. So anywhere I see something like this, which is where the substring starts from, I'm going to keep like a scope. So it is within that scope, and I'm going to check if after looping I have this substring, then I'm going to return the index where it started. Okay guys, so let us go to the solution. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to split the given text. So I'm going to split it to an array. So I'm going to call it test list, and I'm going to convert it to a list. Okay, so this is going to be a list of text. So I want to do the same thing for the substring. So for the substring, let me copy this and put it inside. So this is going to give me what? A list of string. Okay, so let me just change this to substr list. Okay, so I now have the text as a list and the substring as a list. Okay, now I'm going to declare some property which I'm going to use. So I'm going to say scope by default the scope is false. Okay, then I also need a counter to keep track of what is what I'm actually counting in the list. So by default, instead of returning -1 here, I'm going to assign it to results. Okay, and that result should be -1. So that I will return the result. So the result has been assigned to a variable. So I'm going to give some space. All right. So the first thing I want to do is to loop through the text list, which is this given text list on line 3. Okay. So I'm going to loop using the um, enumerate method because I need the value and the index. So I'm going to do for every index and string in enumerate, okay, of the text list. Sorry about that. Text list. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick the first character in the substring. So I'm going to be using it to compare every value I am looping. Okay. And if it is found, I'm going to set my scope to true and keep that index. So let us see it in action. So I'm going to do first sub. First sub is going to be the sub SCR list of 0. Okay, so this is going to be the first sub. And for every value I'm looping, so I'm going to compare if str is equals to first sub, which is the first character, then I want to set my scope, meaning it is within my scope. I have seen the sub list. So I'm going to set my scope, which is equals to true. And I want to also keep that index because I'm going to return that index at the end of the day. So, the index is result, then it's going to be IDX. IDX. Okay. So I now have the scope, and I have the index. Okay. And the scope has been set to true, meaning the item is within my range. Okay. So this is where things start to get interesting. If it is within the scope, if the scope is equals to true, I want to compare side by side. Okay, so I want to compare side by side. Let me show you. Now, for example, so if it's within my scope, I want to check the first item, the second item, and the third item, right? Are they the same with what I've seen so far? Okay, so I'm comparing the item in the scope with the item in the general list itself. Okay, so let us see that in action. Now it's going to be sub str. So I'm going to do sub str. So the sub str is going to be a variable. Okay, I think no need to even create a variable. I think I should just make it easy. So I'm going to use an if statement. So if the str, which is the string, this string we are getting here, right? If is equal, right, to the sub str of counter, okay, sorry about that, of counter. Okay, so if it's equal, it means that yes, we're actually on track, we are keeping track of everything. So now I want to increment the counter, okay, plus equals to 1, so that this substring, every element we start to count. So we want to count from the first item, second item, and the last item. Since we have incremented it by 1, at the end we are going to use this value we've seen so far. So otherwise, if it's not, okay, the reason for this is there are some cases whereby you are going to see um, um, the starting of that value, but the second one is not. So we should reset everything back to default. So I'm going to set the scope to false. Okay, then my result should maintain its initial state, which is -1. Okay, then the counter should also be 0. Okay, so everything has been returned back to default. However, if the counter, right, if the counter if the counter is equal to the length, right, of our substring. So if what we've counted so far is equal to the length of this our substring, okay, it means yes, we have seen that number. Okay, but this should be -1. Okay, so if this is equal to that, we want to return the result. We want to return what? The result. Okay, so remember we have a default case here, which is the result here. So this one will always return -1, which is the default. But if what we've counted so far, right? So it's like counting this 1, 1, 2, 3 out of this general string. So if what we've counted is the same length with the substring, it means the item exists. So we should return the index. We should return what? The index. So I'm going to run this. I believe it should work. Okay, let me run. And excellent. So we pass the first test, we pass the second test, and we pass the third test. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and go back to the platform. Okay, run. Excellent. We pass this. Good. So let us see what is going on here. First of all, let us explore the time and space complexity. Okay, so for the time complexity, so this is O of n. So we have O of n here. We have O of n time. I think let me write it very well. O of n time. And we also have O of n time. Okay, we also have O of n time here. Then we have O of n time here. Okay. So basically all these are O of n. So if we remove constants, they're going to cancel each other out. And that's going to give us O of n time. All right, so for the space complexity, we are creating a space that holds every value of the item. So this is O of n space. We're also doing the same for the substring. This is also O of n space. Okay, I think that is the only place. That is the only place we are making use of the space. So because of these two, right, we are going to have O of n space because they're going to cancel out each other. Okay, so we're going to have O of n space. All right. Okay, let me run this in debug mode so that we'll see. I'm going to put my breakpoint there. I'm going to run. So these are our variables. Now we can see we are looping through it. And now if the scope is true, right? So we're going to do this. So the scope is not true. All we need to do is to set everything back as default. Okay, so it continues and it goes. So meaning only when the scope is true, that is when this part of the code is going to run. So the scope is not true and it continues. Okay, so it continues in that fashion. Now the scope is true. Okay, so you can see the first string is what? F, and the current string is F. Since we've seen it, we set the scope as true. So now we're going to check, are they the same? If they are the same, yes, increment the value by 1. Yes, we have incremented the value by 1. Okay, so now we're checking if the length is the same, right? Are the length the same, which I'm not sure. No, they are not the same. Okay, so now we have the string, we have f. These are not the same. So okay, yes, they are now the same, right? So they are not the same, and this is within the scope. Okay, so we'll go back. So we have E and F. We have E and F. We increment the counter and we return the index. Okay, so this is the index of where we've seen it. Okay, guys, so that is all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to see you in another video. Please ensure you like this video and subscribe.